And finally, episode 220. We've reached the end. This is the end of the Advent narrative within the Gospel of Matthew, and it's the end of our series together. So we pick up the narrative again at Matthew chapter 2, verses 19 through to 23. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared suddenly in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who are seeking the child's life are dead." And Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned in a dream, he went to the district of Galilee. There he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what was spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled: he will be called a Nazarene. Anne Rice, a novelist who specialised in writing vampire novels, she wrote Interview with the Vampire, which was made into a movie and has become a cult classic, starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. And raunchy romance novels. Had a return to faith and wrote a beautiful fictional account of the Holy Family returning from Egypt to Nazareth. It's entitled Christ the Lord Out of Egypt. It's a useful book for its own sake, and also because she provides an appendix where she describes how she came to write it, almost as good as the book itself. Rice gives a believable and heartwarming fictional account of Jesus' early years and how they might well have looked. It is well worth a read. But returning to the text, we see Joseph having another dream, drawing him and the family back to the Holy Land, back to Israel. I'm always interested that the place of fear plays in our lives, as it's played out a fair amount in mine. And God uses it so often for good. Joseph wants to make sure that Jesus and the growing family surrounding him stay under the radar. His tentativeness is affirmed in another dream which directs him back to his hometown, to Nazareth. Yet there are some ironies in this. Joseph is scared of Herod Archelaus, who assumed his father, Herod the Great's, throne. In seeking to secure his throne, he ended up commissioning a massacre of around 3,000 people in and around the temple courts. Understandably, it's against this backdrop that Joseph wants to be nowhere in his territory. Archelaus secures half of his father Herod the Great's territory. A quarter is secured by his brother Antipas, known as Antipas, the tetrarch, meaning ruler of a quarter. He's never formally given the title king, though he is King Herod, referred to as the one who has John the Baptist beheaded and sits in judgment on Jesus. Antipas made his headquarters in Galilee by rebuilding a garrison city that sits above the villages of Nazareth and Cana. The city was Sepphoris. The root of the name is bird, and Sepphoris sat like a bird perched on the edge of the ridge, overlooking the whole region. It was a large, growing and bustling city at the time of Jesus. Sepphoris does not appear in the New Testament narrative, but neither do many of the larger cities at the time, as Jesus tended to stick to the small towns and villages. Yet Nazareth was only 6 kilometers away, a village, and because it was a village, its opportunities for work would likely be severely limited. It's been suggested that Joseph, Jesus, and his brothers may well have walked to Sepphoris most days, as this was where the work would have been, a growing city with major building projects in need of builders. Herod may well have seen Jesus on a regular basis, and Jesus him, with Herod having no idea that this was the child born to be king that his father had sought to destroy. This is not foreign to the biblical narrative. Again and again, the enemy that is sought is living right under the nose of the seeker, and the seeker has no awareness of it. Apart from an incident at the Jerusalem temple, I suspect around the time of Jesus' coming of age, his bar mitzvah, the rest of his growing up and into adulthood is shrouded in mystery. We hear nothing of it, and yet we can perhaps speculate, as I've done here, and perhaps join some of the dots to give a fuller picture of how it might have been. Life, in many ways, is very ordinary. For Jesus and his growing number of siblings, for Joseph, until he disappears off the scene, presumably by death, and for Mary. As the history of these tumultuous and early days recedes into the background, I wonder if it took on a dreamlike quality, especially for Mary. Did it all really happen? Are all the events surrounding his conception and birth, did they all really happen? It all starts to look so strange and foreign to life as it now is. Jesus is different, and yet so ordinary. And nothing has happened for nearly 20 years. Is anything going to happen? Or has the moment passed? Moses would have understood this. He found himself perhaps wondering these same things. 40 years had passed since this prince of Egypt had fled into the desert. Surely nothing was going to happen after all this time. Yet it does. And it did. And we see this pattern repeated in Scripture, often to the point of being past it. Then God acts. Abraham and Sarah waited 25 years for the child of promise, for Isaac, till Sarah was well past the age of childbearing. Then the long hoped for happens. I've even seen it in my own life. Long periods of seemingly ordinary days, and then everything changes. This brings us to now. And here we stop. What happens next? I don't have a great deal of clarity at this point. I do know that God is at work, and I don't doubt that the future will unfold as it needs to. I just want to say thank you for journeying with me. I don't imagine this is the end, though it's likely to morph into something else. Well, I hope that you've actually found some benefit and some points of richness along the way. I know that I certainly have. And I know that there aren't that many people that tune in, but I've found it a blessing actually preparing for and making these short video reflections. So, as we finish 2020 and prepare for 2021, may God bless you.